Welcome to Poorly Explained.
Stay a while and listen.
We're live. What up, Nick?
What's happening?
Not too much.
What's happening? I went on vacation and the world just went crazy.
I know, dude. You leave the state for 1 week and look at what happens.
Yeah.
Israel bombs Iran.
Well, it started like before I left. It was like all that stuff in LA, like the
those peaceful protests where they were burning cars and blocking streets and stuff.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like Trump was sending the National Guard, and the governor was like, "No, don't."
Yeah, there's no reason to.
Yeah. Well, how do you personally? I think that a state, the governor should have, first say over if the National Guard gets deployed or not. I don't think that should be up to a president. It should go, even if I disagree. I'm not, I think that those protests didn't look particularly peaceful, but if the governor don't want the National Guard, then they shouldn't be.
I think it's more of a,
But we're Southern boys. Of course we're going to say
I'm a big believer in state rights. You know
Whoa.
that. Not in a weird way. It's just how it's meant to be.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I feel like the president could be like, okay, you can let it get as crazy as you want, but I'm not paying $1 out of federal funding
to clean the shit up after.
That's if California's got it like that, where you're like, hey, burn the whole city down, dude. That's your prerogative,
Yeah.
They elected you leader of that state,
Exactly.
Yeah. So
No,
I agree with you there.
I agree with that. So you go on vacation. And
so that starts, and then by the time I'm in peak vacation, it's like, oh, hey, by the way.
Yeah. Israel attacks Iran.
Yeah.
Wow, man, it's really weird because, so I think this is on, I talked about this on a podcast with Colin. It comes out tomorrow now. It'll be out by the time this one comes out. But I read an article about Zelensky complaining that he was expecting 20,000 missiles to go to Ukraine. And they ended up going to U.S. Air Force, like an Air Force base in the Middle East. And I was talking about on the podcast with him, well, that makes fucking sense. If we need the missiles, we're just going to keep them. We can't just give you the shit we need for ourselves. Ironically, the very next week, Israel attacks Iran. So it's like, well, the U.S. can't play dumb on that shit now because that kind of blows up the spot of we were fully expecting that fucking attack.
Yeah.
I don't know. How should I feel about Israel preemptively striking Iran? I saw something today. Tim Dillon put on his Facebook story. It was the headline of an article that said, Iran denies a ceasefire agreement. Which is the funniest fucking thing. It's no ceasefire from Iran. They're not taking it. It's well, I don't know. You kind of bombed us.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. It was a surprise to me. I don't know if Iran should have known about it.
I feel like Iran's been 2 weeks out from getting a nuclear weapon for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid hearing about.
Dude, it's so silly. I remember Paige has been into TED Talks lately, and she was listening to one in the living room not long ago. And this dude was saying, there's a world leader out there who's nuclear or wants to be nuclear armed, and he said, well, I have a nuke, and the one thing I can't do is get rid of it, or something, something along those lines. I was like, I actually know exactly who that dude's talking about. And she was like, who? I was like, Kim Jong, either Il or Un, the leader of North Korea, literally said that. And she was like, how'd you know that? It's well, I know that. And number two, it makes fucking sense. And I'm not saying that I want North Korea to have a nuke, but if I was in charge of North Korea and had a nuke, I certainly wouldn't fucking get rid of it. That's for sure.
No. Because, look at it. I always try to, just the older I get, I just look at everybody's perspective in this whole thing. It's look how all the other leaders in the Middle East ended up. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't you want a nuke? You know?
Yeah.
Saddam, Gaddafi, all these dudes.
Well,
recently in
how
Syria.
about this? How about Iran?
Yeah.
Because I had already kind of known the history between U.S. and Iran, but I brushed up on it after Israel attacked them.
Yeah.
And
because then, wasn't it like
they were like really Western-ish.
Yeah.
For a while.
That Islamic Revolution.
Yeah.
Was
so
that like in the
basically,
70s or something?
In the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So from this, all right, this is to, kind of bring up the name of Poorly Explained. This is a poor explanation of how it worked out. But so basically, it was the oil fields were controlled by Britain up to and even past World War II a bit. During the decolonization process, Iran started nationalizing their own oil fields. And so whoever did that wasn't particularly Western oriented. And so in the 60s or 70s, I don't remember the dates, the U.S. backed an opposition force in Iran to overthrow the guy in charge, and that they installed the Shah of Iran.
Right.
And that guy was pro-West. But he wasn't particularly pro-Iranian citizen. Mm-hmm. So as soon as they got the fucking chance, they gutted that dude like a fucking catfish. And then
then they had that big standoff. They had like kidnapped those people.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, I think in the beginning of the 80s, that's whenever they went to war with Iraq.
Yeah.
And that was like that was the bloodiest war in the second half of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And then I think Jimmy Carter, and I think the Shah ended up staying in power, because I remember there was like a clip of them showing Jimmy Carter and the Shah, like, clinging glasses together, like a nice little cheers, and him saying how much he loves them and stuff. And then it just started falling off. And then you ended up with whoever's in charge. It was like the Khalifa. Not Wiz Khalifa.
I know what you're talking about.
But
it's hard to say these words. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's who ended up in power, and that's who's in power today, and they're horrifically anti-West. Which, it's like, dude, I'm the most pro-West guy on earth, but whenever you overthrow, probably a dictatorship in what was going to end up shaping up to be a pretty civilized nation, and you install somebody who brutally oppresses his people, for the financial interests of the West, you're going to end up breeding people who are anti-West.
Yeah.
And that's what we're stuck with. And then, of course...
Yeah, it's like a chicken and an egg thing. It's like, well, do they hate us because we keep doing this stuff? Like, did they hate us beforehand? You know what I mean? Like...
Well, it's like
we've been doing this for like 30-some years now.
Yep.
Like, is it that...
Are they evil, or is U.S. foreign policy been shit for the past for our lifetime?
Yeah.
It seems like maybe it's both, but the latter is still true. Our foreign policy has been dog shit my entire life.
Yeah, mine too. I remember being a small child and being like, there's just always something going on in the Middle East.
Yeah. But they blame it on the Middle East. It's like, dude, why do they matter that much? And it's like, well, they have so much oil. It's like, well, we could be friends with people with oil.
Yeah.
Like, they don't hate. This is not,
It's like, no, I'm not friends with my neighbor. He has a bass boat.
It's like the turn of the millennium is the same as it was the turn of the second millennium. Around the time of the Crusades, where it was like the Muslims were taking over all of, West Asia and North Africa and into Spain, and the West stopped them with the Crusades. It's like, well, we're doing the same shit, and we're sitting here spinning it like, oh, they hate our freedom, I was a big supporter of the war in Iraq as a kid, but I was a kid.
Well, yeah, when you're a kid and like your dad's like, yeah, man, they just hate your freedom, man.
They hate our freedom.
Like, you go to school, they tell you that. It's like, well, you end up just... Until the internet came around with like grown men, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. you end up coming to a point where it's like, well, did they really blow up the Twin Towers because women could vote? You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of hard to believe. I feel like they're kind of dealing with their own problems.
Yeah.
So there might have been some other things involved with that. It's so silly. But now Israel attacking Iran. And so with all that said, it makes me wonder. There's a couple things that Israel and Iran kicking off has me thinking about, and one, it's, boy, if Trump likes that Oval Office, he better keep a fucking 10-foot pole between him and Netanyahu, because I don't think there's a single American that isn't an elected official that wants a war right now.
I wasn't paying attention a ton, but I remember, I guess about a month back or so, it's when this all really like kind of started heating up, and like Trump was distancing himself from Israel on the issue of, like, they were pretty vocal, like, no, we want to deal with this like head on, and he's like, well, let's try to like make a deal. Yeah, Trump's all about the deals, which I always appreciated about Trump. And even like, you know, in his first term, like Russians say, well, why aren't we just making deals with these people? Like, you know, why do we have to continue hating these people? And I love that about Trump. He's like a strong guy. He's a strong personality. Everybody knows that. But
well, you know,
he wanted deals.
You're speaking of Russia. The next thing it makes me think about with Israel and Iran is this bad for Russia or good for Russia? Because Iran is an ally to Russia, obviously, and Israel's
and China,
an extremely close ally to America.
Yeah.
And China, boy, China, I bet you there. If this is the exact scenario that I described about a year ago to my wife, and I was telling her that the position that we're in, it was just Russia, Ukraine. This was more than a year ago, because it might have been shortly after the October 7th attacks in Israel. Mm-hmm. I remember telling her that right now, if World War III would kick off, I personally, with zero formal knowledge of, you know, military games and, you know, war gaming and all those things, I feel like we have all the right cards to lose that fight. Because if Israel's fighting Iran, if Eastern Europe is fighting Russia, mm-hmm. and we get involved with those, where even if we don't have boots on the ground, if we're overly involved in those, if China attacks Taiwan, we cannot stop it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can sit here and saber rattle for America all you want. There's nothing I love more than saber rattling for America. But I mean, you talk about proximity is a key factor. China's right there with them, like right next to Taiwan, obviously. And you know, we can't beat Russia, Iran, and China all at the same time alone. Yeah. And we are essentially alone.
And to make matters worse, it's like this is all coming at a moment where like the house is divided.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Big time.
Anything that one side does, the other side tears down and does anything they can to get in the way of.
Yeah.
And that's on both sides of the aisle. Like, that's not like a you know.
Yeah, it's not a knock on either Democrats or Republicans. It's just a fact of...
If AOC says something, there's plenty of people that like tear her down on the right. And if Trump says or even blinks too many times... Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to... You know what I mean? You can't even like...
If Obama walks on stage tomorrow and says we should not fight Iran, there would be Republicans all over the country screaming to invade them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And it's the same can be said for the opposite. But
so how are we supposed to get on the same page with, you know, like a triple front war scenario?
We can't. We simply can't. Yeah. And it's because of the alliance structure right now. We fucked up big time, you know, throughout my lifetime and even before that, of just... So NATO is basically, it's not a defense alliance. It's a freaking protectorate. Where it's like, dude, France used to be the fucking powerhouse in Europe.
Yeah.
They're like a shell of their former selves. Germany took on the world twice and almost won both times.
Yeah.
But now
it took the whole world to stop them. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And now
they had no one on their side, really.
Yeah. I remember, in World War One, they had Austria-Hungary.
Which is basically just Germany. Like, it's like German's cousin.
Well, there was like a I guess it was like a meme before memes existed in World War One that the Germans said that they were handcuffed to a corpse fighting alongside the Hungarians. Because they would the Hungarians would like go on an offensive in Russia and just get fucking stomped, and then the Germans would have to bail them out.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like Germany is what it used to be. I don't feel like France or Britain is what it used to be.
No, I think Europe as a whole has been neutered.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Yeah, Europe is.
I feel like they just moved in a direction of like we'll talk about sometimes, like it's more.
They're resting too hard on their laurels.
Yeah, and it's just
they're like, well, look what we used to be. We're not
too
like
progressive,
that anymore.
too liberal.
Yeah,
to where like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, war is stupid almost. It's like, well, yeah,
it is,
but you have to be ready for it.
But,
you can't just not.
Yeah, you can't ignore threats and say that it's because you're a nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we can't rely on NATO too heavily. Basically, the best NATO countries that we could rely on are the ones bordering Russia already. And unfortunately for them and us, they're just not really that powerful geographically. You know, they don't have the actual resources and shit that you would need to really help out. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe kicking the hornet's nest, it would turn fucking Britain, France, and Germany back on, which would be a beautiful sight.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's possible. Well, I was listening to Sean Ryan today, and they talked pretty much exclusively about the China-Taiwan deal. Mm-hmm. And so Sean Ryan's going to be interviewing the vice president of Taiwan this week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And
so
they were explaining, there was Eric Prince and Eric Bruthel or Boothel or something. Eric Prince is the Blackwater guy. Mm-hmm. And I forget what the other dude did, but he seemed smart. So I'll take his word for it.
Okay.
They said basically the biggest problem for China going into Taiwan is Japan.
Nice.
Which, you know, me and you, we've been
we've
been on the Japs for a while, dude. We're big fans. We're pro-Japanese. This is a pro-Japanese podcast.
Mad props to the Japanese.
Yes. They can hit above their weight class. So Taiwan apparently used to belong to Japan.
Okay, I can see that.
But they were explaining that Taiwan, there's this thing, I remember, I forgot where I heard it or read it in, but like there was like an old saying from back whenever France was the shit, and it was whenever France sneezes, Europe catches a cold. Mm-hmm. Well, now it's whenever America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. And apparently Taiwan's military is woke as fuck. Everything's all left wing and shit.
Oh, really?
And that it's not looking good for them. Yeah.
I wouldn't it surprised me with someone who faces actual war on a daily basis that they would be like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like when things started getting like kind of heavy in the world and like the army commercials stopped being like super, like, you know what I mean? It's,
like, you remember the Marine commercials during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars?
Yeah, that dude's on the mountain, dude.
Yeah, it's like a dude in his dress uniform climbing up a mountain and fighting a dragon with a sword, and they're like Marines.
Yeah. The few, the proud.
Yeah, that's the type of shit we need.
I remember recently, it's like all the commercials were like trash, and then things started getting spicy in the world, and then like it was just like straight white guys. And like,
there was a few years where there was wasn't there like a CIA commercial?
Yeah,
with like it was
two moms and stuff.
You can be a black lesbian and be a spy in the CIA.
Yeah,
and then like we started losing everything.
Yeah.
Turns out not super cool in the places we need to spy on.
It was around the same time that like the dude with the nuclear codes was stealing people's purses and stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Like, he's like a bald gay guy
wearing a dress. Like, what happened, dude? Like,
Yeah.
So 4 years of that, and then you're
It's
like,
like,
oh,
how
I
much-
wonder why things are getting crazy.
Yeah, it's like, dude, as bad of a rap as the Dulles brothers get, how much worse is it to have like a dude in a dress doing that shit?
Right.
No, but with Israel attacking Iran, does this hurt Russia or does it help them? Me personally, I'm gonna say it probably helps them because next thing you know, Iran's choking off all the oil exports that it would be getting. And here's another little factoid I discovered: for every dollar that Europe is paying to help Ukraine fund the war with Russia, they have all, to a country, spent more on Russian oil.
Nice.
So basically, Europe is, at the time, subsidizing Russia more than it is Ukraine.
Yeah. I know China's, I think, the biggest trade partner with Iran, too.
Yeah.
So I feel like it makes those countries lean more into each other.
Yeah.
And then,
And
I mean, that's a lot of power, like, collectively.
it's definitely nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. And, you know, I'd have to say it helps Russia, too, man. Because I feel like it's gonna put Putin in a position to be like, well, I mean, do I negotiate? Y'all want these like peace talks and everything? Well, look, you know what I'm saying? Like,
And then Pakistan came out and publicly backed Iran.
yeah,
Said that if it
oh,
doesn't...
they were
like,
talking bold.
Yeah, boy. They
Real
dropped
bold.
the N-word
Yeah.
on Israel. They said that they would nuclearize Israel if Israel got too crazy, which Pakistan does have nukes. We need India to step up and start
Yeah.
swinging their sticks at Pakistanis again. To
Dude,
distract
I
them.
forgot about that. I was like, that was not that long ago. Man, what's going on?
Yeah.
Which, side note, you know, all this is horrible and it's scary, but can we talk about how awesome it is? How like Iran's like posting stuff on Twitter, like the whole world will feel it. Like what like what are we in, like a bad movie or something? Like people go to Twitter now.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and then you have all the talking heads on Fox and CNN or whatever, like all the legacy media shit, and they're like, well, Iran doesn't have a very good expeditionary military. They just back proxy groups like the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah and all that stuff. It's like, well, I'm watching rockets land in Israel, so that seems to be, that's not nothing.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, they did that. Yeah.
It's all fucking crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it kind of got this weird point where like people just like to talk about people's capabilities, and stuff like it was like, well, that's, they did 9/11 with like dudes with box cutters and like, you know what I'm saying? That was devastating. Like, look at what happened on October 7th.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that with very little funding. I mean, it's crazy. It's like some James Bond stuff, dude. They had like hovercrafts and like, like,
and it's like, as great as you talk about the United States military, it is as great as you think it is.
Yeah.
But the world's a big fucking place, dude.
It is. You can't be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just scary. I feel like we don't.
And the Japanese had the bead on America in World War II. The Japanese jumped into the war knowing that they could never materially beat the United States.
Yeah.
They bet on the United States not willing to give up our kids for a war for too long.
Yeah.
Which they came close.
Yeah.
That
didn't quite work out the way they expected. But
yeah, not great. We got a little mad.
Yeah.
But there was literally, after Iwo Jima, which is not like, everybody looks back on history and like they look at Iwo Jima like it was this legendary battle where we won and stuff. But in hardcore history, Dan Carlin brought up a letter that got sent to either the admiral or the general that was in charge of it, and basically it was from a mother who was like, why the fuck is my kid on this island I've never heard of? Like, get him off there. I thought we're here to beat the Japanese. Why are we going to this place? Which, too many letters like that, and next thing you know, you have to end the war, or else the people who want to keep the war going aren't getting reelected. And so You got to take that into mind. With all the military might America possesses, there's still, we value American lives big time.
Yeah.
That I'm not super interested in Americans dying in Ukraine, Iran, or Taiwan
No.
enough. And you can talk about how strategically important any of those places are. It just doesn't matter that much. We're so far removed from these places that they'll never matter enough for us to be willing to lose a lot of people.
Yeah.
And Taiwan's really the big one, because we as a nation we've sworn to protect Taiwan for decades now, and it holds the strategic importance of basically an entire national economy because of its chip manufacturing.
Which is like, how do we let that happen? You know, how does that?
Yeah.
Doesn't that just seem like, hey, there's this
What's
like
wrong with Borneo?
super contested island on the other side of the world. We're gonna make sure we have something. We're gonna build our whole economy and all our technology based around this one island, highly contested, other side of the world.
Yeah.
Just didn't seem. I don't know.
And then even if Taiwan gets attacked and we repel the Chinese, if it's close, it could still have horrible effects for us. Because get ready for this now. All through the 1800s and into the 20th century, Britain, the British pound was the global currency. It didn't start taking its real downturn until the Battle of Jutland in World War One.
Okay.
Whenever the German Navy took off and took on the British Royal Navy. It ended up being a stalemate. But a stalemate was bad enough for Britain for other countries to start losing faith in the British pound. But it goes back. That goes back to Horatio Nelson beating out the French fleet at the Battle of Gibraltar. I think it's Gibraltar. Basically, that was Napoleon won. Butt fucking all of Europe, and the British put a blockade on all of the French Empire, and then Napoleon deployed his navy to try and stop the blockade and allow other supplies across the world by sea to get to the French Empire. Horatio Nelson, who's like a legendary British Navy guy, he might have been a captain or not, but he's like, there's tons of stories about him. Super interesting dude. But he basically eradicated the French Armada in a single battle and basically secured the British Empire's control of the seas for practically a century after that. The next time they got challenged was in the Battle of Jutland, and like I said, it was more of a stalemate or a draw than a victory or a defeat, and that started eroding at the confidence of the British pound. And then after World War One, they kind of held on to it, but after World War Two, they were done. They were cooked.
Yeah.
They had spent too much and lost too much. They won World War One and World War Two, but the American dollar came out on top. So you can look at the battle for Taiwan, which the shit going on between Ukraine and Russia and Iran and Israel, it's just gonna make China hungrier. And even let's say it's a stalemate, what does it do to confidence in America? Confidence in America across the world.
But there's definitely an unraveling happening. Because this isn't normal. This isn't like,
No.
it hasn't been this way for a long time. We grew up
in a unipolar world.
And things are relatively peaceful. They always had, like I said, there's always something going on in the Middle East, but it was always contained to like troops on the ground fighting each other. Nothing like spectacular.
Yeah.
Like not like aircraft carriers like being deployed and like giant missiles, you know, like
Right. If an aircraft carrier gets deployed, it's for the entire war.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
like a carrier strike group is enough to handle a war.
Yeah. So now we're at the point where I'm like, I don't know. You know, we have all this crazy equipment and all these countries, like we were talking about earlier. Like everybody likes to talk about military capabilities now, and like they analyze, it's almost like too much analyzing going on. It's like, well, do you really want to use this stuff? Because things are pretty serious if you're using this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, you know, they got those islands in the South China Sea between China and Taiwan where it's like, you know what's better than an aircraft carrier? An island.
Yeah.
You know, it goes back to talking about why were those kids dying on Iwo Jima? Because Iwo Jima was an island and it was placed where we could start using fighter escorts for bombers coming from the Solomon Islands going to Japan. We needed that to have enough for our fighters to have enough fuel to go there and back to escort the bombers.
Yeah.
Which you could technically you could think like, oh, an aircraft carrier could do it, but no, an island is better.
Right.
And China just so happens to have built islands during the Obama administration between them and Taiwan. So it's like you can show up with aircraft carriers, and let's say they can't even sink them, but they can easily make it to where you can't launch aircraft off of it. And then all of a sudden, what's an aircraft carrier that can't launch aircraft? It's a boat,
Yeah.
you know? And you can't sink an island. It's all pop ball, as we would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I still think, obviously, I love the country,
Yeah.
and I think that we can win. My point is just like, at what cost? You know, is it worth it?
Yeah. And that's
Is fighting over this stuff worth it?
if I were another country and I wanted to fight America, I would ask, how much can we make it cost?
Yeah.
You know?
Wasn't that whole, that was Osama bin Laden's whole thing, right? When he's like,
Yeah.
when we're gonna drag them into endless war, and like just basically bankrupt them, you know?
Yeah.
I think he was talking like thousands of years. Like his plan was like, we're gonna set off something in motion that's gonna be like generational. Like,
Yeah. But those guys on the Sean Ryan show, they said there's even political factions in Taiwan that are more pro-China than they are pro-America or pro their own freedom.
yeah, well, they don't get to decide. There's 100 people in the world that get to decide.
Yeah. And it's all stupid.
I know, it's so dumb.
Like,
Because, I think about, not even like I feel like me and just some random Chinese guy could get along all day long.
I feel like,
Like,
yeah, if
no
you
problem
met
whatsoever.
a dude, if you met a dude from China, if you met a dude from Israel, Iran, Ukraine, or Russia,
Yeah.
you would probably have more in common with them than you have like not in common. Like,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't like your views would be more aligned than misaligned.
And the problem is, it's the people that suffer,
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah, it's silly that we're just gonna fight over shit like that. Where, I'm a big believer that the world's big enough for everybody, but it's just the certain people that would disagree end up, sitting in the right chair at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break. I gotta use the bathroom. We're gonna pull up some good news articles that we can go through and cover some of this stuff even better. We'll be right back. No, I don't listen to Joe Rogan every day like I used to,
No, I mean,
but I listened to the Ken Burns one, and that one was good. I love how hyped up he was on George Washington. That was fun.
Yeah, it was tight.
Yeah.
But when he's talking about the revolution being a civil war, I never thought about it.
Yeah, he
From
was
that
saying
lens, but it
something about
changes
like
everything.
the British used a bunch of Americans.
Yeah, the
to fight the
loyalists.
war?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
And he's talking about American casualties. He's like, is way more technically in the Revolutionary War, and I was like, man, this dude just changed my whole perspective. So I can't wait for this
Yeah,
new
it's
one to come
nice
out.
to have. Because I love documentaries, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I watch a bunch of them that are critical of America throughout history, and I don't mind that at all because I'm not very. I err on the side of not being critical of America. I'm kind of rah rah with my
Yeah.
views,
I'm
but to hear
secure as
somebody,
an American, though. Like, I
yeah,
believe we have the best system. We have, I believe what we've done is mostly good.
Yeah.
And we did it for reasons, like, it's complex, like he said.
yeah, but it was nice to hear of somebody that
Mm-hmm.
is critical of America, like with the Vietnam War and all the stuff that he talked about, and even the Civil War and stuff. But then is also like critical of America, but still very pro-American.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
What
that
I
was
can't
a
stand,
breath of fresh air.
I hate is like a 30-second soundbite, and it's either like either pro-American or anti-American, and it's
Yeah.
like 30 seconds. It's like, well, no, man, look, things are complicated. Like everything is complicated.
Yeah. Let's look at some videos of Israel.
All right, let's check it out. So this is Israel.
Well, no, it's an ad.
No, that's them.
Yeah, it looks like it. No, they would never work that hard. This is like from the Egyptian days. It's some Amish people.
Yeah.
It's,
Shout out to the Amish.
yeah,
They have it right.
yeah. I wonder how their mental illness is over there.
Oh, dude, they're just
They can
building
build a fucking
bombs.
porch in 3 hours.
You heard about them building all those homes in like North Carolina after the floods and everything?
I think I might have heard something about
Like
it.
FEMA went like shut them down and stuff. They built like
Yeah, of course.
they
the
built something
government.
dude. It was crazy. They're like churning out homes.
Yeah, like actually being useful, and the government's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, FEMA's like no. You'll wait 6 months for your trailer,
Yeah,
like a good boy,
yeah.
dude. Let's get some CBS merch.
Dude, how about that mug?
Let's read some comments.
A bunch of gay liberal comments. I'm not a fan of Iran, but let's face it, Israel started this. By what? Bombing them? Since when was a preemptive bombing starting it?
Yeah, you guys can't take a joke.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't think I've ever left a comment in my life.
No.
War. It's a war. I like this. This guy's
This guy
yeah.
knows his shit.
preemptive.
Oh man. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can find Trump's Truth Social on here.
Yeah, dude. He's been like right before
Yeah,
I
like,
got here.
Yeah,
he had
before
tweeted
we
out
recorded
something.
this.
Let's
This is
see.
the first time I've ever had a digital device
Look.
on this website.
Look, see, like this. I don't like this language.
I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. Shout out Nike. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it'd be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certainly, certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They're all dead now,
Oh, dude.
and it will only get worse. There has been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it's too late. God bless you all. Yeah, that's a very nuanced standpoint of just. And I'm pretty sure you spent the first half of this podcast talking about how stupid it is to talk about capabilities in the world we live in. He's talking about capabilities here.
Well, I know. So like, what are you saying? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You gonna like destroy their country, like till there's nothing left and stuff? Like, what do
You
you,
can't. I remember hearing what's a I remember hearing that Iran is a particularly defensible country. So I'm looking up right now something that I hold very dear to me in history, and that's just geography in general has its sway on
Yeah.
history.
Well, yeah. Look at
So
Afghanistan.
Iranian geography. Iran is geographically diverse country in West Asia, bordering the Caspian Sea to the north and the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman to the south. It's characterized by mountainous terrain,
That's never good.
particularly the Zagros Mountains in the west, which Israel is west of Iran, and a large central plateau with desert regions. Great. The climate is generally arid or semi-arid with variations across regions. So basically, yeah, Afghanistan. So if you look at this map, the viewer can't see it, but look up a fucking map of Iran. And what you end up with is it's bordered on the west with Iraq,
Yeah.
and west of Iraq
Where's
would
their
be where
capital?
you find Israel. The capital is Tehran.
Look, is it up there, up top?
Yep, right here, Tehran.
Yeah.
So how about this? So I got curious because Israel launched its missiles into Tehran to quote unquote destroy the nuclear facilities and kill top Iranian officials. So I used Google Earth to map the distance between. Now this was just Jerusalem to Tehran, and it ended up being right around 920. I think it was 927 miles, and which is basically the difference between where we are right now, which happens to be Lafayette, Louisiana, and Jacksonville, Florida. I think, but from where we are to Jacksonville, Florida, in central Louisiana to Jacksonville would be 650 miles, and the distance between Jerusalem and Tehran, it was 927. Okay?
Yeah.
So you look at that distance right there is about it's similar to the distance between Louisiana and the east coast of the United States. It's actually less than the distance between Louisiana and the west coast of the United States. Like if you wanted to measure it, you would go from about right here to, let's see, right here. Let's change it to miles. So from Louisiana, damn it, my computer's messing up. It's me messing up with my computer. So basically, you can say Lafayette's around here. We can get to like the middle of New Mexico with 928 miles. So you look at these two nations at war, which would be Israel and Iran. We just go mid-Israel over to Tehran, more than, basically the same as just crossing Texas from where we are. Crossing Texas and half of New Mexico.
What's on top of Iran? Like
What's north?
Yeah.
Basically nothing. Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan,
Yeah.
and I don't even know what the fuck this is. Oh yeah, I guess nobody owns that one.
Well, I'm saying those are all probably like Muslim, like those like Caucasus.
Like those are like Muslim Russian.
Yeah.
They might be.
So
they might be their own states, but they're basically Russian.
So to come from the west, you have to go through mountains. To come from the east, you have to go through desert. And to come from the north, you have to go through a ton of Muslim countries.
Yeah.
Which you think they're just going to be like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go. No, you can't. That's the thing. It's like they can't really prosecute a ground war because they have Iraq and Jordan in between them.
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing.
What's even going on with Iraq?
I think it's not so great since we left.
But I'm like, do they even have like a
Running water? I don't think so.
Like a faux government in place, though. You know, like
I'm sure.
I'm sure it's a free for all.
How's Iraq doing? Let's ask Google. How's Iraq doing? Google search. Iraq is navigating a complex situation. Boy, talk about with progress and persistent challenges while relatively stable since 2022 with improvements in security and some economic growth. The country continues to grapple with issues like corruption, unemployment, and reliance on oil revenue. Sounds like Louisiana.
Yeah.
Humanitarian needs, displacement, and the legacy of conflict with ISIS also remain significant concerns. So, not fantastic. I don't know. I know we claimed that we bombed them and rebuilt them, but I feel like we might have, you know, we might have rounded some corners off in rebuilding Iraq. Who knows?
Man, you know, interesting fact. You probably heard this, but Saddam apparently would like surround himself with Christians.
Really?
Yeah, like all the people that worked for Saddam were Christians because
didn't know
he
that.
knew they wouldn't martyr themselves. Because if you're a Christian and you kill yourself, you go to hell.
Yeah. Suicide's like wrong.
Yeah. So I was like, man, that's pretty. You wouldn't think that, you know.
I remember hearing
He's
that
just giving
like
out his information or well.
whenever. Oh fuck, my phone's over there on the stand. Well, we can't look at more Truth Socials. But I remember that whenever Saddam was in prison, like he was likable enough for the guards to be like bros with him.
Yeah.
Like they were like, no, he remembered their names and all their kids' names, and would like share his cigars with them and shit.
What do I mean? Think of it like this. Like, think if Gavin Newsom was here right now. Like, you don't think that dude could smooth talk us?
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? He's a politician. Like, he's a ruthless dictator. Wasn't a great guy, but like.
Gavin Newsom's not a ruthless dictator. He's Saddam is. Gavin Newsom's just the governor of. Is he the governor or is he the mayor of LA?
I think he's the governor
of Cali?
California.
Okay. No, if he was here, dude, I disagree with him politically.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It goes back to, do you have more in common with these people or less? And I'd say, if we just had a conversation, I'd probably get along great with the guy. He's a lying, sorry son of a bitch, but I'm sure I would. I'm not gonna be.
I remember I watched a debate between him and Ron DeSantis, which I have no idea why they had a debate, but they did.
Yeah.
And
they're literally further away than, like.
Yeah.
They are 3,000 miles away from each other. They're states, the states that they govern.
Did you watch that debate? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't watch that dumb shit.
So they had a debate.
They both just lied through their fucking
But
teeth.
listen, there's a point where I'm like, dude, Gavin Newsom was turning around everything that Ron DeSantis was saying. It's like, it was scary how good of a talker he is. Like, he talks so well. I'm like, this dude could be the president. Like, as bad of a track record as he has,
Yeah.
I'm like, people will vote for him. He's that good.
Well, you get two different pieces of media all the time. Because I have some cousins who are Democrats. And, you know, I'll come out and say it. It's like, Shelby, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, he's, you know, I would die for the fucking dude. But we disagree completely politically. And whenever we talk about politics, the only difference, you know, we have the opposite political beliefs. And the reason is because we don't see the same thing. You know.
Like what?
Like, you talk about Trump. You remember whenever the election was coming up in 2020 and we saw a bunch of videos of Biden sniffing kids' hair?
Yeah. He didn't see
and it. Was like, oh, he's a pedophile. And then Hunter's laptop.
Yeah, which was real.
Which was real.
They had
and all that
hours of video.
He saw none of that. All he saw was videos of Trump shaking hands with Epstein.
Yeah.
Claiming he's a pedophile. And, like, apparently, like, they would show videos of Trump's daughter sitting in his lap at, like, a stadium or something and be like, oh, he's a fucking pedophile piece of shit. Like, stuff like that. We just saw the opposite side of things.
Yeah.
So, to him,
like, how does that
happen, dude?
Like,
I mean,
is it just the algorithm? Like, is it what you look at?
It has to be. But that's all I'm saying. We just saw the opposite side of things. Whenever we start talking about like once we get down to the brass tacks, we agree on everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Like men playing in women's sports.
oh, I don't know about that.
That's a big one.
He does that. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think he's he's definitely pro-gay, which I'm not super pro-gay. I'm not super anti-gay either. I just wish they would shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Honestly, anybody from the age of 20, I'd say 28 to like 36, like anybody in that, like I remember a time it was like we didn't care at all because it just wasn't a thing. It was just
I remember me and you got into an argument with somebody while we were riding in their truck on a lunch break. Somebody who was a little bit older than us. And he was like, dude, we can't just let these fucking fags get married. And me and you were like, what? We don't really care. Like, they can get married. It doesn't really affect us.
Yeah.
And then literally, that was like 2013.
Yeah.
3 years later, they were like, we need to neuter your fucking teenage son.
Turns out whoever that was right. Like we couldn't give an inch, but I'm just saying, like there was that age range.
I love that we didn't name him too.
There's an
I would have. 2 weeks ago, I would have named him.
There's an age range of like we never thought about it. You know what I'm saying?
Because that was so obvious.
Yeah.
I would say it's like let the gays get married, but what you're talking about is just silly. No one would ever say that.
Yeah.
And then fucking literally Trump got elected and they were like, fucking let this dude swim against women.
It's fair. Or like the whole like tranny story hour thing. It's like someone would get arrested if they did that when I was a kid. Like, you know, imagine if a drag queen came to your school and tried to read you. They'd be like, "What? Like, get out of it!" They'd literally call the cops.
You know, like Republicans will be like super on like you need to just not worry about getting offended and stuff. If like my kid's daycare just let like some tranny into the room to read him a fucking story, I would be offended.
Yeah,
I would be like horribly offended.
Why is it always like this? The like kindergarten? Like why do they never go to like a nursing home? Like you know, think about it. They never like.
Why aren't they doing safety meetings?
Yeah,
for like grown men. Why do they have to do it for children?
Right, right.
Like that would have actually been great. I would not have taken a hard stance if like whenever we both worked at Webco together, that our safety meetings was done by a tranny who, instead of talking about like not falling off a forklift, would just tell us that like, you know, men could get pregnant.
Yeah.
I would have actually not taken that hard of a stance against them. I would have been like, no, it makes perfect sense.
You pay more attention.
Me out of here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have heard about it. For one.
Dude, I don't know. The whole world's crazy.
This segment's way funnier than the last one. I'm glad I made that comment
to lighten
during
things
the break.
up. Yeah.
By the way, we're both independent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I love that. All podcasters claim to like I don't take either side.
I'm
I'm
biased.
not a Democrat or a Republican.
Dude, the way things are going, I'm just like I don't know.
It sucks. 5 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah,
they
I'm
keep
just
talking about like
definitely a Republican.
they keep talking about like red pilled. I'm like black pilled. I'm just like I'm just a nihilist now.
I wouldn't say I'm a nihilistic, but god damn, dude, everybody's feeding into the same machine. I was listening to, matter of fact, I think it was Sean Ryan once again, and it was talking about. I always said, I remember if people would talk about like, oh, the problem with America is the two-party system. It's either Democrat or Republican. There's no in between. Mm-hmm. If we had a third party, things would calm down and stuff. And I would always say, yeah, that's probably true. But the bright side is that a two-party system is better than a one-party system. One-party systems look like Germany in the 30s and half of the 40s, or like Soviet Russia, or China today, where there's one political party. And that's all you get. But for all the disagreeing that Democrats and Republicans do, they seem to agree on all the things that I wish they would fucking disagree on. You know? Just wars. And the stupid shit. It goes right back to the Iran shit. It's like, and Iran and Ukraine. It's like, well, the Democrats don't agree with Republicans on Israel attacking Iran. Yeah, but you disagree with the Republicans on we should be giving Ukraine everything they need to keep fighting the war. So it's the same thing, just a few hundred miles different.
You know what I find interesting?
And it's the same vice versa.
So it's only the most extreme, like, leftists that don't support Israel. Because I feel like those like super PACs, they fund both sides.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
CNN, CBS, CNN, BS, ABC, BS, all of them.
and I'm always scared that like what's gonna end up happening is on either side, like either extremely right, similar to someone we won't name names, but Austrian painter, or extreme left. Like a dude with a little red book, you know, like those kind of, like, one way or another.
Both guys, we don't agree with either of those.
Yeah. But either way, it's like those people are going to be like the heroes of the day when, like, Israel makes a fool of themselves starting all these conflicts, and then it's going to take someone like that and people are going to get behind them, and that's dangerous, you know?
Well, yeah. And we're talking about it's only the extreme left that's kind of going up against Israel right now.
Yeah, it's like the squad.
Yeah. But, dude, I agree with them. I personally don't think that if a nation cannot stand on its own 2 feet without, full backing by America, it shouldn't be a nation. I think every individual human being has a right to exist.
Yeah.
A nation does not hold rights the way individuals do. Here's a thing that I heard about on Tucker, and boy, you're about to really laugh at this once I tie it all together.
All right.
And they were talking about Big Pharma, and how only the U.S., and everybody knows, only the U.S. and New Zealand allow advertising for pharmaceutical products on television. Well, the reason why that's bad is not because people will buy the products being advertised. Because whenever you see the drug commercials, they're all silly and stupid, and the side effects are out of this fucking world.
Oh, yeah, dude.
The reason why they advertise on these channels is because all of a sudden that means that channel can't be critical of the company. Of, especially of the drugs that aren't mentioned in the commercials.
Yeah.
So isn't it weird that the
it's like
the right and the left on TV, the big TV corporations, they don't have nothing to say about Israel.
No.
Is there any Israeli companies advertising on television, or maybe there might be something else? You take it from here. So what?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like with the whole COVID thing, it's like CNN saying like, yeah, dude, you have to get vaccinated or else, you're a murderer. And then it's like, brought to you by Pfizer. It's like, oh, okay, no conflict. Yeah, this is like straight edge journalism right here.
But it's true, because none of the news organizations, the quote-unquote news organizations, are particularly critical of Big Pharma or Israel.
Yeah. It's like the Sackler family.
I don't think Israel has anything advertising going on, but there might be something else. There might be something else going on. Who knows?
I don't know, man. I don't know how deep we want to go with.
We don't.
Yeah.
But I'm not buying any of it.
Well, I don't know. It's like, to your point of, if a nation can't stand on its own 2 feet without, bailouts or like support.
Look, Google already knows. Oh, yeah. Google's going to lie to my fucking face.
Oh, yeah.
It is not accurate to say that all news organizations are supporting Israel. While some news organizations have been accused of bias in their coverage of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, others are seen as more balanced or even critical of Israel.
Oh,
The issue is complex, with various news outlets
yeah.
facing criticism for perceived biases from different perspectives.
Well, dude, they have like
I haven't seen a single fucking one.
I've seen a whole compilation of like
Thanks, Google.
GOP senators and stuff like talking about like there should never like they're talking about like Ukraine flags and all this stuff.
Yeah.
They're like there should never be any flags in the Capitol except the American flag, which I agree with. But then they'll post up like in front of the dude that said its office is like an Israeli flag. It's like, well, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so that's cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all silly.
I don't know why America can't just be
Oh, let's check
America.
Reddit. Reddit will have some juicy shit. Here we go. Why do people not seem to realize how biased in favor of Israel the Western mainstream media is? A lot more reading. I'm not doing all that. We're looking for funny comments. Mr. Attack Cat says, even the calling of Israel's as the Jews sets their critics up as anti-Semitic or as who hate the Jews. That's gay. Reddit sucks dick, dude. Reddit might as well be owned by CBS.
Yeah, I don't mess with Reddit.
Yeah, it's super gay. Oh, look, Army commercial. What we got?
Look,
We're looking at a dude looking at
I just saw a thick
map.
neck Caucasian.
Yeah. They're
Things
looking
are
at a
getting
boat,
serious.
A football team. It's your time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not my time, dumbass. I'm not going to Iran. I'm not going to Iran, Ukraine, or Taiwan. Realize this all sucks. Our conversation without the internet's better.
Yeah. I do like it though. It's nice.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fun to just look at a screen and not.
That's when you
talk.
send me little messages.
Yeah. No, I had a fun one with Trump's Truth Social.
Yeah. What's up with Trump and Elon? Is that squashed?
I haven't heard anything about it. So apparently Elon deleted the tweet about Trump being on Epstein's island. So apparently it's squashed.
Okay.
2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. That was yesterday.
Okay.
No, that was 3 days. That was June 13th. Why can't I just fucking... What?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm thinking about getting an X account.
I
never had one. I never had like a Twitter or anything.
I had a Twitter back in like 2010, and it sucked. It was just...
Well, I don't want a celebrity just telling me, like, hey, I had like avocado toast this morning.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like that's what it used to be. Now it's like, it's just like the president talking to me directly and stuff.
Yeah. When's this from? Looking at the Jerusalem Post. So we're finding some unbiased media sources
Yeah.
to help navigate us through these troubling times.
Yeah. So what's the deal like with the like we just gave up on Palestine now though? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like no one even talks about that anymore.
Yeah, everybody loves... All of a sudden, people care about Iran, too.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? So I've been very critical of Israel in this podcast here today. Personally, I don't give a fuck about who they bomb. I just don't want the U.S. to get involved. To be honest, if you sat me down and explained to me the situation, you could find me making sense of preemptively attacking Iran. Because Israel is hated in the Middle East. And if some rogue country gets a nuclear weapon, they would use it against Israel.
Well, I find it's like I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, to me, it's like if a Jewish guy and a Muslim guy get into a fight in New York
they walk
City,
into a bar,
but they're in like New York
Yeah.
right now. I'm like, it has nothing to do with me at all.
Jewish or Muslim, because they're both all over the place in the U.S.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's so far away, and
It's like, why don't y'all fist fight?
why can't y'all
If it's
just
so bad, but they're not.
yeah? Why can't you just squash your own beef? Like, why does it have to be like a $5 billion affair on the American taxpayers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, why does it boil down to Russia versus U.S.?
Yeah.
That's really all it is.
Yeah, I think all the
Russia
time.
backing Iran and America backing Israel.
I think
We don't need that.
here's a hot take. The U.S. should team up with Russia and China and just dunk on the whole world.
So here's something
Think about
that
it.
a lot of people don't know. Everybody knows that the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the year I was born. It's just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with them knowing that I was about to hit the stage.
No, I think it was Rocky beating Ivan Drago.
True. But the Russians wanted to join NATO. Let me say that again. The Russians wanted to join NATO.
Yeah.
What world would we be living in right now if HW had the foresight, or if, we've been critical of U.S. foreign policy?
Mm-hmm.
What if we just let them in and we said, hey, you know what? You're switching over. You're no longer a conglomeration of communist states.
Mm-hmm.
You're just Russia in the Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, join NATO. Come aboard. Be a part of the EU. Dude, what world would we be living in if we had the foresight to do that? It would be totally fucking different.
Yeah.
But we didn't. No, what did we do? We denied Russia and took on the Baltic states.
Mm-hmm.
And then all these other... It ends up where we are now, where it's like...
We pretty much all that resulted in today's conflict of like Russia being like,
Well,
man,
you fast forward 13
right at my
years.
doorstep. Like, what am I supposed to do?
You fast forward 13 years, and Ukraine elects a pro-Russian president.
Mm-hmm.
The CIA funds a media campaign and effectively overthrows the fucking dude. And instead of...
I don't believe it.
Well, whenever you have a militia overtake a government, you would think that other governments would say, like, no, let the democratically elected guy back into place.
Like,
no,
nah.
America immediately recognized the group that overthrew him.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot his name. I had his name literally earlier. It's gonna come right up. I'll remember it in just a second. Yep, Viktor Yanukovych. So in 2014, Ukraine experienced significant political upheaval and conflict, including the Euromaidan Revolution. There's that Euromaidan. And the annexation of Crimea by Russia. These events led to the change in government with the ousting of President Yanukovych and the subsequent Russian military intervention and occupations of parts of Eastern Europe. I like how Google left out the United States. But from what I heard, the United States had everything to fucking do with that. And that pretty much set the stage for what's going on in Ukraine now.
Mm.
And there's two sides to every fucking story. I'm not pro-Russian in the slightest sense.
No.
But whenever the war kicked off between Ukraine and Russia, what's his name? Putin was all, we're going up against the National Socialists in Russia, in Ukraine.
He's calling them Nazis and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a tight move. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, okay, so you look into it.
Looking into it's dangerous though, brother.
Well, so apparently whenever whenever Germany invaded the Soviet Union back in 1941, the Ukrainians were heavily favoring the Germans, and they kind of did some anti-Soviet stuff, and so that stuff, those ideas kind of lived on. So I don't know, like everybody made the joke of being like, oh, it's the Azov battalion. I mean, we can look at this picture right here. That's kind of damning, if you ask me.
It's a totally different symbol.
Yeah. Well, it's not that far off. But I don't know.
Yeah. Dude, side note. So, like in the 90s, do you know much about the Russia in the 90s? Like what was going on in Russia in the 90s? After the fall of the Soviet Union?
It depends on what. But yeah, like the selling of military equipment by just like random guys.
Yeah, well, apparently
they were like selling submarines to like Mexican drug dealers.
In the whole 90s, like Russia was pretty much just run by like gangsters and stuff.
Yeah.
And then
apparently there was like the Americans, we were very scared that some of the nukes would get sold to some scary people. So America bought a ton of uranium from gangsters who ended up being Russian oligarchs.
Yeah, and then those oligarchs had like a new generation, like towards the mid to late 90s. Like they established themselves as like billionaires. Yeah. And then they just had thugs working for them. So they would like close these deals with like, it's basically like the U.S. mafia just ran the whole government,
Yeah, like imagine if like.
Yeah.
The fucking Gambino, like Fat Joe Salerno,
but he's like
had access to like enriched uranium.
He's like legit in charge. He's not just like behind the scenes, like really pulling the string. He's like no up front.
Yeah, we should have had Israel bomb him.
But dude, it makes sense.
I said, it would be like Fat Joe Salerno having access to enriched uranium,
and then, but it makes sense because I watched this like little documentary on it. It was like 30, 40 minutes. It was small. But they made the point. It's like, well, this is what led to like this quiet KGB dude in the early 2000s showing up. And he promised security. And he promised tightening up. And it's like, oh, I get it.
What's his name?
Putin.
He's putting it all together.
Yeah. So when you put it in perspective, it's like, oh.
Yeah,
I get it.
Fucking sense.
Like this is why they like him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it was also like at the same time as people were like gangsters were selling tanks and submarines.
Yeah.
There was also like everybody else waiting for like 8 hours in a bread line to barely feed their families.
Yeah.
So whenever somebody shows up and is like, "Hey, we can just have food. We can just have a nation again." People will be like, "Oh, this dude rules."
Yeah, he's like, well, I'm gonna get rid of the gangsters, and everything. Everything's gonna kind of go back to normal, in a certain sense.
Yeah,
and well, like I said, they're forever grateful.
He literally wanted to join NATO.
Yeah,
it's like that's one of the biggest fucking missteps in. Well, I mean, we've had our share of missteps in foreign policy in my lifetime, but that was a big one.
Yeah.
Well. I think that's all we got for the day. It's getting late. I know you need to get back to your family. We've run a pretty good amount of time. So.
All right. Well.
Yep.
Take care, everyone.
Well. Keep your eyes peeled.
Knowing is half the battle.
Yeah, knowing is half the battle. Shit's unraveling as we speak.
But everything's going to be all right.
Maybe.